Yeah, I think we both agree on that. So that's good. But a point to ponder. It's one thing to be biased. It means you stand for something, right? It means you have an opinion. But it's entirely another thing to be hypocritical or to be dishonest. And if you are hypocritical or dishonest, you have absolutely no right to any credibility whatsoever. In light of recent events, the shooting in Moncton and in downtown Vancouver just a few days ago, I thought I'd make a video to settle what it takes, the real information of what it takes to own and acquire a firearm and to operate a firearm in Canada. Here we go. I've made the decision. I want to buy firearms. First thing I'm going to have to do is register for a Canadian Firearm Safety course. That's going to cost me somewhere around $200, give or take. Some people charge more, some a little less, but that's what the cost is, roughly. I'm going to register for a course and I'm going to go. It's about 16 hours. It's a 2-day safety course. 1 day is the non-restricted, which are typically rifles and shotguns. 2nd day are restricted, which are typically pistols, and any shotgun and any rifle of any kind for any reason that the government or the RCMP thinks should be restricted. So I take this 2-day safety course, and during that course, there's a lot of book work. We're going to have to move our way through 2 books about this thick. We're going to handle disabled firearms, rifles, shotguns, and pistols, learn how to load them, unload them, handle them, basic safety, all the rest of that stuff. You're going to write 2 written exams and 2 practical exams. You have to pass both exams by a score of 80% or greater. At that point, you'll get a document called a course report, proving that you passed the course. So you take this course report and you put an envelope with a picture that's guarantored, right? So you got to get a recent picture of yourself, and you have to provide an application in there and another fee, an $80 fee to be exact. So you're into this thing for about $300. Then on the application, you provide all your personal contact information. You provide your mental health history, if any. You provide any situations where you have any kind of contact with law enforcement or the justice system. On top of that, you provide contact information for all of your conjugal partners, if any, for the last 2 years. Then you provide contact information for 2 people that have known you 3 years or longer that will provide personal references that you are not a violent guy or solve your problems with violence or whatever. Trustworthy, whether they have concerns about you owning firearms, all the rest of that stuff. And you send all that stuff to the government. Now, the government the Firearms Center will sit on that information for 28 days as per the Firearms Act. There's a waiting period there. Then they dig up all that information, they enter it, and then they do a deep criminal record check on top of that. And that's electronic, happens almost instantaneously. Then they will decide whether they want to contact any or all of these people, including yourself, and talk directly to you about why you want firearms and all the rest of that stuff. So I've gone through the system myself. I've been referenced for other people. I've had those interviews. Some of them run half an hour. So it's not a joke. They're not handing licenses out on the street corner. Then from 3 to 6 months after you've submitted that information, you may get a card in the mail, you may get a license. So it's cost you around $300, taking 3 to 6 months. Now, when they issue that card and they approve your license, they send that out to you, you now begin getting a criminal record check every day for the rest of your life, or as long as you hold that license. Every day. So think about that for a second. Your name goes through CPIC, which is the police information database, every day. Convicted pedophiles don't get a criminal record check every day. Police officers get a criminal record check once. Okay, so put it in perspective. Not only do you get a criminal record check every day, and they monitor that. I'm being monitored like a criminal would. But on top of that, I actually forfeit some of my charter freedoms, my charter rights. One of those is the right against unwarranted search and seizure. Upon reasonable notice, and it's been determined that reasonable notice is 24 hours, the Canadian Firearms Center can actually search my home. And anywhere in my home where firearms are maybe reasonably kept, which is basically everywhere, right? Well, we think you have pistols, and you keep them inside books. We're going to check all the books in your home. We're going to check under your bed. We're going to check in your drawer, in your bedside table. We're going to check everywhere if they want to. And they actually don't even need justification. They don't need a reason to do that. It doesn't happen very often, but still it's there. I got my home searched without warrant. So interesting. So keep that in mind. Now, everything I've just told you, now I got a license. I don't have any guns yet. Okay, so that's how far we got to go already. Now that monitoring, I'll say one more thing, and that monitoring thing, if I get into any kind of contact with police, like get arrested or warnings or whatever, they know immediately. And the next day, the firearms center calls me and says, hey, what went on last night? And I got to explain myself, or they'll take my guns away. So this is a wickedly tight system. Don't be misled by anybody. All right, so now, I want to buy my first gun. I take my license, I go to the store. If it's a non-restricted firearm, then it's basically a cash transaction, right, or whatever, debit or whatever. It's a transaction where I say, I'll take that firearm, I'll take this ammunition. They look at my PAL. Most people will verify that it's current, and away I go with my firearm. Now, if I want to get a restricted firearm, which are typically pistols, or any rifle or any shotgun of any kind for any reason that the government or the RCMP thinks should be restricted. Example number one, like an AR-15, semi-automatic centerfire rifle, just like any other non-restricted rifle. Exactly like any other rifle. Why is it restricted? Because it has a military or paramilitary appearance. Okay, it's restricted because it looks scary. And you can do the research if you like. That's the truth of the matter. That's it. Mechanically, there's nothing there of any significance. But nonetheless, so I go and I want to buy my AR-15. And I buy a non-restricted firearm at the same time. But the AR-15 is restricted, so I can't take it home when I first buy it. I have to get a bunch of extra paperwork. Part of that paperwork is there's a registration document for all restricted firearms, let's say pistols. So let's talk about registration for a second. Restricted firearms, meaning primarily pistols, have been registered in Canada and are still registered since 1934. We've had a firearm registry for restricted firearms, for pistols, for handguns since 1934. And what's the firearm most used in crimes? Handguns, right? And how many of them are registered when they find them? Less than 5%. Okay, so firearms registry, we have all this history about pistols, about handguns being registered, and we know that the registry does nothing to stop these crimes. But yet, for some reason, some people in Canada thought, well, that didn't work. What could even be better? More of it, more of the same. So they wanted to do a long gun registry. Again, didn't do anything to prevent any crime. People are still using handguns. And they're still using long guns when they want to. So anyway, good to know. So I want my AR-15. I got to wait for a registration certificate or transfer. It has to be transferred at the firearm center, so I don't get to take it home right away. But not only do I need a registration certificate, I also need yet another piece of paper. I need an authorization to transport. So the government has given me a PAL with restricted. They check my criminal record check every day. They know they can search my home at any time, but I cannot still be trusted to go from my home to the shooting range without another piece of paper. With that piece of paper, that makes me okay. Without that piece of paper, I'm not okay. So let's talk about that for a second. Here is the package that I have to carry around with me when I go from my home to the range to shoot my guns. Here it is. Look at this. There it all is. If I forget my package of, see, I got 4 packages to make sure I never forget. I'm doing everything I possibly can to comply. But if I forget one sheet of this, my ATT or the registration for the certificate for the firearm that I'm actually transporting, if I forget one piece of paper, let's find out what happens. Do I get a fine? Maybe I get my gun seized and I gotta go get it? Let's have a look. Every person who stores, displays, transports, or handles any firearm in a manner contrary to the storage, display, transportation, and handling of firearms by individuals regulation, they like their long names, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment. In the case of a first offense, a term not exceeding 2 years. 2 years. In the case of a subsequent offense, a term not exceeding 5 years. I'm in contravention if I don't have that piece of paper. I'm in contravention if I don't get an ATT. 5 years? And what if you say, well, Rod, if let's say you're a criminal defense lawyer, they never give you 2 years on a first offense, dude. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. They know that you're an instructor for the program. You're the one that's upholding all these laws and making sure that everybody else complies and that they know the law. Well, let's see. Guilty of an offense punishable on summary, because that's what they give to good guys. $2,000 and 6 months. Well, I'll tell you this. If I got 6 months in jail right now, it would destroy my life. I'd lose my house, my job, my family, everything. I have I'd have a firearm charge on my record. Convicted criminal. And what happens in the real world is, I may not have the $20,000 to defend myself, to not go to jail. And the Crown says, hey, well, we charge everybody. This is what we do. And you know what? We'll let you off with no prison time if you just plead guilty. So it's an appealing choice for me, because I'm like, okay, 20 grand, bankrupt me, maybe 50 grand, depending on the situation, right? Am I going to go bankrupt, or do I just take this charge? They're going to give me no prison time and say a 5-year firearm prohibition, so they'll destroy my guns. And I may have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of guns, and prohibit me from ever even shooting a gun, having a gun in my hand. For what? For not having a piece of paper. So it's crazy. So how do I get this piece of paper? Another interesting point. To get an ATT, I have to have a valid PAL, possession and acquisition license. I have to have my firearms license. Then I have to join a shooting club and keep that membership up at all times. Usually around $200 a year is what that costs. Then I take the membership card and I send it to the firearms center, and they issue me an ATT, which can be revoked at any time, which I have to renew every 5 years. If I forget, again, in contravention of all of this stuff, jail time. Now, sounds pretty easy. I'll tell you this, it's far easier to get an illegal gun than it is to get a legal one. Far easier. I've just told you what's required. I have to be on top of everything 100% of the time. I got to be obsessed with making sure I've got all this stuff, or I will go to jail. Now, I haven't committed any crime. I haven't shot anybody. So, good thing to think about. I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Okay? There was a shooting in Moncton where a guy somehow walked through 5 RCMP officers and shot them all, killing 3 of them. It's a horrific situation that happened there. Do you think for 1 minute that he was like, okay, while I'm doing this, I'm concerned about the firearm charges. I'm concerned about that extra 6 months and $2 grand for illegally using my firearm, illegally transporting it during the commission of a crime? Obviously not, right? Murder's always been illegal in Canada. Shooting people has always been illegal. It's attempted murder. So the firearm charges, who are they punishing with that? To own a firearm, it's a huge burden. It's a huge risk. Yet over 2 million Canadians still own firearms legally. And it's speculated that over 2 million people actually illegally have firearms that didn't go through the licensing system because they've had them forever. 4 million Canadians that haven't shot anybody. Kind of interesting. So get this. When something like this shooting happens, you get people coming out of the woodwork that don't know anything about firearms, they don't know anything about the laws, and they want to talk about it. Do me a favor. If you look at police, both municipal and federal, all over Canada, the police themselves, as individuals, on the job, have been guilty of major criminality. They've been caught doing hundreds of counts of sexual harassment, sexual assault, drug trafficking, trafficking in guns, simple assault, murder. But we as citizens look at that and we say, well, you know what? I'm not going to paint the whole police force. I'm not going to paint the RCMP with the same brush, because there's so many good people out there that are standing up for me and upholding the law. Why? It's unreasonable for me to let a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. I'm not going to let what a couple of these bad cops did reflect on the whole force, because that is unreasonable. So a little while ago, one guy out of 2 to 4 million Canadians shot police officers. All I'm asking is for you to do your research and think about it, and offer the private citizens, the law-abiding citizens of Canada, the same courtesy that we allow the police. That's all I'm asking. Point to ponder. Anyway, now you've got the truth of what it takes to hold, maintain, and use firearms in Canada. I hope this helps, and I look forward to talking to you guys again. Thanks for watching.